Exactly. Yes, indeed.
Veteran.
Who would have known, man?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm recording.
Okay.
Just frame it
Should
up.
we take my hat off?
It's however you want to look. I really don't care. It might help.
Cool. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
The bald head, but
Yeah, you should leave it on.
video.
Yeah, if you want
The
to.
light was reflecting off the head.
Yeah. If you keep it on, just pull up a little bit higher. Yeah, that'd be good. Right there. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see your face a little bit better. All right, awesome. So we're just gonna start with introductions. I'm just gonna do a clap, so I know how to match it up.
Ain't nothing what you do.
All right. Sir James, you want to introduce your guests? You guys introduce yourselves.
I'm still learning myself. I can't do the introduction. I'm still learning. Right?
I'm with you.
And also state your reference into the,
I got you.
your knowledge with the firefighters.
My name is William Jones. I was a firefighter like my dad. I just took a little bit of time to be a firefighter so I could emulate him.
I'm Fred Robinson Jr. My father's the one that we're speaking of today, and I did not want to be a firefighter.
I'm Sir James Thornhill, artist, muralist, not a firefighter.
So, engine number 5, it has this huge legacy in Richmond, and your father had a big piece of that. Were you growing up while he was a firefighter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just kids when he was a firefighter.
Was he a firefighter when you were born, or was that something he did
No,
later?
he became a firefighter in 1950. Was it 1950?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 3 years old.
Yeah, he went in 1950, stayed 31 years, so 1981 was when he retired. So I've known him as a fireman all my life.
And so have I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did that mean to you growing up, and was he? How what was the impression you got from the community too? How did they perceive him as well?
Well, everybody in the community knew my dad. The only thing we knew, my dad used to tell my mama, sit on the porch, I'm gonna be back there in a little while. He drove the tiller, that's the ladder truck they used to call a hook and ladder, and the guy on the back used to guide the back end so it would turn properly. And he'll tell my mothers, sit on the porch, and they'd fly by, and my dad would sit on it and wave at them, So we saw that as my dad would always be having fun. And then one day I saw him fighting a fire, so I got a kind of feel of what being a fireman was, the danger side of it that I never saw. I always thought they were playing all the time.
So you just thought you could have jumped on the truck.
Right, I thought they just played all the time. But my daddy used to play all the time with my mama. You know my mama?
That's that southern draw. Yeah, my mama.
My mama.
Do you have the same experiences?
For me, it was like the greatest dad because he had a job that was different from everybody else's. And then he'd do things like come to my elementary school. We had, this was back in the 3rd grade, we had Korea Day. And he came there with the helmet, the air tanks, and all of that. And we were little kids in there, and he came, I said, that's my dad, and everybody was looking, is that a policeman, is that with the badge, dressed blue on it. Yeah, and he did this presentation, and I remember that our class assignment after that was to actually draw pictures of what we thought were scenarios of a firefighter's duties and stuff like that. And then the teacher would help us to write little stuff under it. Of course, the lines were 3 lines, the letters were this big.
Yeah.
So, and as of today, that was back in I was 4 years old.
Still got those
I
pictures?
still have those pictures today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I just grew up, it was just amazing.
And my dad was a lot of fun. So,
Speaking of which,
yeah, fires in the back. Yeah. What an appropriate background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a little loud.
See, I always saw my dad as being just a fun guy. Mm-hmm. So everything he did, we thought it was funny. We had a playground directly in front of our house. It was a city playground. And my dad was the one that had the keys to the playground. He used to open up for everybody the days he was off. And then when he was off, he repaired small engines, so everybody in the neighborhood came to get their lawnmowers fixed.
So he literally was just like a civic leader.
He was
Yeah.
that,
He
and
was
he
well
was,
known
he
in
was
the
the
community.
president of the neighborhood society. So
Yeah, he
we thought he was like,
he started the neighborhood watch in the area that we lived.
What area was that?
Churchill.
That was Churchill,
Okay.
35th,
On 35th Street.
35th Street, 7th block.
Bill Robinson Playground.
And
Right,
yeah, the
right.
name of the playground was Bill Robinson. So when
Right.
I was coming up, all my boys, they thought it was my playground.
Right.
So was it your
my
father?
friends, yeah, but it wasn't my father.
Oh, it wasn't your father.
Bill
Okay.
Robinson
Oh.
is Bill Bojangles.
Oh, okay.
Right. But
Yeah.
the playground was named after him directly across the street from where we used to live.
Right.
And everybody thought, is that your dad's playground? That's my dad's
And we
playground.
would always say, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was a firefighter. I guess
Yeah.
they were like, wow, that must
And
be
then
pretty.
2
Yeah.
blocks up the street, it was the Red Shields Boys Club.
Mm-hmm.
Red Shields at that time was real popular. Everybody would go to the Boys Club. He had the keys to that. He used to open that up for everybody.
Yeah.
So he was a neighbor. Everybody in the neighborhood knew my dad.
He was very involved with the boys club, the girls and boys club, the new one that was built at 37th and R Street.
37th and R.
Yeah, and he had a lot to do with that. He started the Oakwood Murals and Civics organization, which had cultural series that would go on, because he wanted to bring shows to our area that they have, like at places like Bird Park and all of that. So there would be jazz groups and different groups that would come there that normally would not come to a playground. And this ran for 10 years, and he had people that were backing him,
Plunky and the
one is a juju.
Yeah.
All of
Plunky
them.
would always
Yeah,
come there,
yeah. Yeah, and it had backing from who was it? Siegel's Supermarket.
His friend was
Charlie Siegel.
Charlie
Really?
Siegel.
Yeah, where Siegel
Backing financially
Right,
on all that shit.
yeah, U-Crops.
So
He knew the U-Crops
Sam
family.
U-Crops.
he
Yeah.
had some pull.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he was seen
In touch with
as one of the icons of the neighborhood.
He really was.
So anybody
The
running
best
for an
of it.
office
Yes.
would naturally come to him and try to, because that was a big part of Churchill, that area down where we lived. A lot of voters, and so they would come and get him to kind of voice for them.
Yeah.
The mayor,
Henry Marsh.
Marsh.
They were best friends.
Yeah, they were best friends, and
Yeah.
he helped Marsh get in office.
In office. Yeah,
And Marsh even said that he helped them get into office.
exactly.
So he was a fun person, neighborhood person, that every time people would come by the house, he would sit down with the Bible. His biggest thing was talking about the Bible to them.
Yeah, that's what was the last interview we did. He said, he always gave a piece of advice.
Always.
He
young
would
man,
cite the
scripture.
Yeah.
He was always recite scripture.
And he wasn't a really religious person,
More
but he was a spiritual person.
Right.
You know,
He saw he saw the pragmatism of the Bible.
exactly. And
Right.
as he progressed in his years and stuff like that, it's like I noticed that he even became more spiritual.
Right.
It's like you said,
Right.
he was like a walking Bible. You know, he would talk to kids or talk to us, or if anybody had problems or they were going through this, that, and the other, young and old, he would just sit there and talk to you. And then when he finished, they didn't tell me as I got a little older and could understand it. Like I met your father, and I never talked to him before I talked to him, and they said it was just like
Everybody used
talking
to
to
say
God.
that. Yeah,
That's what they said.
everybody would say
Yeah,
that.
and they said I really got something out of it. Where some of them would come by the house just to sit on the porch and talk to him, young and old. People I'd see around on the corners and stuff like that.
Yeah, we
They
wayward
sitting on the
boys
porch.
never knew what he was talking. We were too wayward.
So do you think the depth of his, I guess, perception was tied to, was it more the, I don't know, maybe it was nationalism or his community, like wearing
It was
his
community.
community.
It was more community.
But was also did he grow up in any type of racial prejudice? When was it
course.
also the seeing people maybe die during the firefighting?
I think I think
He
that
grew up in
touched it.
Jackson Ward. He grew up in the projects.
Yeah.
Where's that? Yeah, I want to say where that character.
I think it
come
all
from?
comes from a
From
lot
his
of it
father.
came from that, and then the
Yeah.
fact that with his job,
Right.
because he would always tell us, he say something like, you know, he'd hug us, always tell us he loved us, and to the point where he like looking at him like, come on, you just told me that.
Yeah.
You know, but it was like, because he knew going to work, it was a chance he wouldn't come back home.
Come back home, yeah.
And so every time he came back home, it was like he was just so oriented with us as his family, you know, and then he stressed to keep his name clear, like he kept it clear all his life. He never said a curse word.
I've never heard him curse. I've never heard him curse.
Come on, man.
Never. So I had to start cursing so I can teach my brother how to curse.
And I learned how to curse
never cursed.
from
I had to
him.
teach him how to curse.
But I never did it in front of my parents. I mean, one time, I can count maybe once or twice, I slipped, not in front of him.
No words.
Yeah.
I had to put the words in.
Was it a bad thing that you slipped, or?
You know, I mean, it's something and blah, blah, blah. And then I slipped and said something like, I thought it was the worst thing in the world. I never, ever cursed. It's just, you know, in front of
he doesn't curse now.
Anyway. It just yeah.
But you know, the funny thing about it is that everybody in the community used to come by and talk with him. And he had certain people that they would come by just to hear the Bible verses. Just to have him witness to them.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just, I would see that and I'd go out and play and come back and there used to be talking and my dad I see some people coming crying. So he was sort of like a spiritual mentor. You know?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And he kept you straight.
I think kept a lot of people straight.
Yeah.
And then the greatest thing for me is I became a firefighter. He and I fought a fire together.
I could never do that.
So that
You have to tell, please tell me how
that
that
was
happened.
so
Really?
yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because I
Is that the truth?
because I floated to
We're fact checking everything.
Janet told us to watch out for him, right?
yeah. Because I was floating to different stations and I got in a station with him. We even went on calls together. The biggest firefight they had just before I got involved with it, this oil tanks blew up right down on just before the Murray Street exit.
Right, yeah.
And they shut down 95 for probably 2 days.
Yeah, that fire burned for 9
and he
days.
fought that fire, and I think that was one that's the one I can remember how dangerous that
That's the
fire
one that
was.
temporarily blinded him.
Right.
Yeah,
It
he
was so
was blinded for like
dangerous.
nine
All
days.
from
smoke,
The smoke and
The smoke
stuff
and
from
the intenseness of the blaze.
He came home and he was taken to the hospital. He came home. He had the patches on his eyes. I can remember it clear like it was yesterday.
Right.
And he was blinded for 9 days, and he just sat quiet to himself. I guess wondering was he gonna get his sight back?
That's the only time I sensed danger.
Yeah, and he got his sight back.
Was there? Could you even tell from Church Hill? Could you see smoke?
You could stand in
If they closed
Chimborazo
down
Park.
95 because it melted the highway.
Yeah, you could stand in Chimborazo Park, and the smoke would go over your head. I
And
remember
did
that.
you know your father was there?
And I would look over there, and I knew my father was there.
When you go down,
oh my God, the
there's a
feeling
little
you get
oil
from that,
company.
it's unbelievable.
Right after you cross the James River Bridge, you see all the oil tanks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They start blowing up.
Oh my.
And so they melted all the guardrails, everything on 95 right in that area. The fire was so intense. It took a couple of days they had closed down 95.
I heard there's a fire going on like that now.
There's one in Texas.
Yeah.
The one in Texas, that's a chemical plant.
I saw it this morning.
Yeah,
It just brought back
smoke going
memories.
up. But there's no way you can put out one of these huge oil tanker fires with water.
Right.
It just doesn't work because it's got oil.
Yes.
So you gotta contain that the tanks next to it don't blow, because there was like, if you go down there, several tanks down there.
Yeah, those big white tanks.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's the first time when you asked me, what did I think of being a firefighter, and I thought it was all fun until that, because like he said, his eyes got damaged, injured. And so then I started seeing what the real intensity of being a firefighter is. Now, we were always proud of him because we could go, here comes my dad on the fire truck,
On hook and ladder.
in the hook and ladder,
Yeah,
driving the tiller, but you don't even have tiller no more. where people drive the back end of the
Right, I
truck. They
remember.
don't even do that
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, what was the purpose of that?
Because
To guide
when
the
you
truck.
turn
Yeah,
a
so
truck,
long.
Yeah.
if
You
you're
turn
going at a
right
certain
and he
speed
turn
and they're
left.
getting ready to turn, he's got to slide that end out
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that this turn can be perfect.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember how I used to fly around the street
It's
on
called
the
a
fire?
Tillerman.
You remember when he used to fly around the street on the fire truck and
Yeah.
get in the car and drive like a turtle?
Well,
Or tell me
no,
slow
he
down.
got-
Would he have
when
slow
he got
down?
older,
You need
he
to do
said
this. You need to
slow
do
down.
that. I'm like,
He used
man,
to
you used
drive
to
like
drive
a
the fire
girl.
truck and brag about it like it was a race car.
Yeah, the thing that I
Oh,
remember
man.
most about my dad is his integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I always said if I can get up close to 1% of his integrity,
I'm a good
close
man.
to 1%, I'd be a great man.
Mhm.
If I can get to 1% of his integrity, because everybody knew him by his word.
Mm-hmm. He used to instill that. You know.
By your word, you're known. He said,
Yeah.
have fun and just make sure that you have integrity.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. My dad was a man of integrity. That's why I think he drew so many people to him to have them talk with him about the Bible. Because if they saw in him somebody that lived those principles, then they could believe more what he was saying.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm gonna-
Well,
so I'm
his
gonna-
sons were
Talk to
just-
talk. That's what you
his
say.
sons were
Walk
off
to
the
walk,
chain.
talk to talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna juxtapose that with today. You think we're missing a little bit of that, or do you think he could teach the next generation something?
He
Here's
did
the-
that.
yeah.
When he was in the fire
Yeah.
department, a lot of the younger firemen that came in far after him,
Right.
they would stop by the house.
Right.
You know that.
Right.
And they would just talk to him.
Mhm.
You know, if they were having a problem at work or something like that, it was like he was human resources. You know,
Right,
they come
right.
by the house
Right.
on their
HR.
day off.
He was
HR.
HR.
He was HR at 720 North
Oh,
35th Street.
Yeah,
He'd be sitting in the backyard working on a small engine, a lawnmower.
Yeah.
And here come the fireman, just got off work, 7:30, 8 o'clock. He's in the backyard. I look out there and somebody's in the dress clothes. They talk to him. And he would mentor a lot of people because after he passed, I started to see a few that I hadn't seen in a long time, especially at the funeral. And they would just tell me how they don't even know how they would have made it without him, you know, without his guidance, without this, that, and the other. Because when he went into the fire department, like I said, they had certain areas they couldn't go in.
They couldn't fight some fires
they had
in areas that were white.
Yeah, they had
and they
certain-
pull right up and they go, "You can't fight this fire."
What?
Yeah, a fire.
Yes.
Oh my.
They had, one
So-
lady
so
said,
I'm guessing-
That's-
I don't want those black firefighters fighting
What?
my fire."
Yeah.
They better let the house burn
Burn,
down.
burn.
Before they let them, yeah, and then and like at the station, it was like they had they had to stay. The black firemen had to stay in their uniform
In a
at all times, where everybody
Right.
else could be casual.
Right.
And
They had to stay in dress uniform.
and then they did the chores. They had chores they do: clean the hoses, clean the kitchen, paint the walls, do this, that, and the other. But then that was at Duval, but
Right.
that was a segregated station.
Mm-hmm.
But then once that station was tore down, then they moved. They branched off. It's like the fire department integrated.
Let me
So that's when they started to have equal
Rights and
everything.
stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
So I was curious then when you
I
were
want to back
saying.
up to that question you just asked about community. I mean, about do you think this will work at this time? He and I were having a conversation in the car before we got here. Because you went to school in the community, you went to the movies in your community, you went to playground in your community.
Yes.
yeah.
Because that was like that, everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
So you knew who was the guy walking down the street and gonna get drunk that day and walk back home with the bottle in the bag and everybody talk about him. That Mr. Taylor, look at him, he
Yeah,
drunk.
that's true. That's just like our block.
And so you knew who in the neighborhood was who.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my dad, since he knew everybody in the neighborhood, he had established a certain persona. And so yes, it would work now if you had more community involvement. Now nobody knows anybody.
Well, if he had a YouTube channel, maybe.
Right. Well, nobody knows. Some people don't even know who lives next door to
I mean, but
them.
look at the playgrounds. Playgrounds
Yeah.
you go by now, they don't have a swing set in them. We used to have stuff like the volleyball nets,
Right.
swing
Sliding
sets,
boards.
sliding boards,
Sliding boards.
Jungle gym.
Right.
jungle
Right.
gym.
Go to the
Yeah.
playground and come back
Hopscotch.
home till it get dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now you big
it's
can't do
nothing.
that.
It's nothing. All the playgrounds
Like
are
Because once again, the disconnectedness of what used to be communities And now
Like
people
a
are
village,
just moving
the
a
old
village.
village thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
Now you don't know anybody, so
Yeah.
the crime is different.
We knew everybody
You
on
couldn't
our
put
blocks.
kids out in the street because the guy next door might be a pedophile.
Yeah.
You didn't know.
Yes.
Now you don't know it, and so it's
Yeah.
it's different.
There's a
I
lot
think-
more self-policing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's an response to when you asked, what do you think about could you make that work at this point? Only if you get back to the community
Mhm.
base.
Everybody on the block knew
That's the
everybody. They could
No,
correct
yeah.
you.
No,
You could
I agree
listen
with
to
you.
them,
Yes.
but now you can't say anything,
right.
you know,
Well,
to
in
anybody.
a way, technology's made communities more broad spectrum.
Right,
You know,
right,
like
right.
I say Richmond, Greater Richmond's my community.
Right.
Whereas, you know, people now, they were stuck in maybe, you know, a whole block was their community.
Right,
Yes.
right.
You know, now.
And the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
the community's really more of an abstract.
And it
Um,
should go back to that. If it goes
It
back
should.
to that again.
Well, and
then
I think what's really interesting is what Sir James is doing. Is, you know, he's evolving community, but in the right way. You know,
Right.
he's doing historical pieces,
right.
and I don't know if you've seen his pieces.
I've seen a few of them since
Yeah,
you
but
mentioned
I didn't know
Yeah.
it was him that was doing this.
Yeah, I've seen a.
But
I'm
it-
sure I've seen a
But it's,
lot of them.
but it's amazing when he's up there. People go and they're taking pictures. They're sharing that
It's
history
a
to their
snapshot
network.
of the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you know, but it's also getting people to want to come out and experience those same
Right.
blocks, and I think there's a lot of
I call it hieroglyphics on the pyramid walls.
Mhm.
That's good.
Because they're there
That's
forever.
good. That's good.
Yes, yes.
That's
I'm a
good.
scribe, so somebody said.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. You are.
Mhm.
In reality, scribes did that.
Yes.
Either in pen
Yes,
or
yes, we did.
pen. Yeah, scribes did that.
Yes.
You're a good scribe.
Thank you, sir.
with that being said, how do you guys feel that he's doing this mural basically 2 blocks away from engine number 5
Man,
station?
When I asked him,
It
I said,
touched my
why are
heart.
you doing this?
Yeah, it touched
Yeah.
my heart. I just
Yeah.
looked at the wall when we pulled up because I think you told me which wall it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was something in Jackson Ward, but that just sticks out.
It is in Jackson Ward.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
literally,
yeah.
yeah. That sticks out and stands out like a movie screen.
Yes.
And he used to
Yeah.
hang around in
Yeah.
this area, see,
Yeah.
because on Second Street, Bojangles used to come up, and he used to
He
have all
knew
your
all of
jazz. He knew all
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he hung out here in
Oh,
this
yeah.
area. So that's a great tribute to him.
Yeah, I'm
Very
honored.
good. I'm
honored.
I'm touched
Yeah,
by that.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank
you.
Yeah.
How many
I've
years-
never met you before, but I think you're cool. Now,
Well, thank you.
since we got
How many years did you
Right,
spend at
just
that
give me some
station?
time, right?
Well, can you tell me more about just what that station meant? Were you there as a kid?
No,
I've
that
been
was
there a
that was
couple of
before
times.
my time.
Yeah, I went there a couple of times because he used to play pool.
Yeah.
One of the things about that station is they had a rec room in the station that had a pool table and ping pong. And my
Pickleball.
dad was the best at both,
Yeah.
ping pong and pool.
Come on, man.
And so I used to go down and watch him sometimes, when we could go in.
He stayed there 10 years.
Yeah,
It was 10 years. And then
That's a good amount of
yeah,
time.
10
Yeah.
years. And then
And that was the start of his career.
right. And then
right.
the-
No, before then he was a trash collector for the city.
Yeah. And
That's
then 2
all
years,
blacks could do working for the city. And it's on the outside is do yards, do the grounds,
Yeah.
and do trash.
He let's say he was
a
in the
big promotion.
service, World War II.
Yeah.
He came out of there, went to the grocery store on Duval Street. From there, 2 years later, he went into the city
What
as a
was
trash
the store
collector. I don't know exactly. It's near that plaque they put in the ground for him, where the station
Because
was.
I was born at 121 West Duval.
Okay.
They used to
okay.
have a grocery store over there.
Yeah.
In
Jewish
fact,
people had it, right?
right, it was right.
He used to bag groceries in
Yeah,
there.
he used to
Oh,
bag
my.
groceries.
And
in
then
there.
2
I
years.
used to go in there, man.
Yeah.
2
And
years
they used to
after
give you this
that.
little book where you could write, you owe them. You write in this little brown
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I don't remember that. You're a little older than I, so I don't remember that. But the
Come on, man. Come on, man.
But you ask about what that did. People in the community, you were talking about Jackson Ward. A lot of people from Jackson Ward used to come down there because at the time that I was growing up in Richmond in the 50s, it was segregated. It was just starting to ease up a little bit. They had a big thing about, what was the name? Woolworths.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had the counter to sit in from with
Right,
Woolworths and
yes,
all of
yes.
that. So the sense of pride that station represented a sense of pride, because the only place that blacks worked that you could say, man, you got a job like that.
Well, I mean, this was news to me that before station engine number 5, before engine number 5, the only jobs that you blacks can have in the city was trash collectors.
Trash guy. He went for the
It was a
city.
grocery store
Yeah, he
to
went
get.
for the
So
Yeah,
that's I'm talking city jobs, like
City jobs.
municipal jobs.
And if you
It
could
was
get a
basically
job,
trash
and
collectors.
right,
Yeah.
and if you could get a job as a mailman, like Sidney Knight was a mailman for hundreds of years, you know. But I'm joking. But those were the best jobs. If you can get a city job, first of all, you can be a postman. And then what the city did was open up the application process for firefighters to blacks in 1950. That's when he applied, transferred from being from being a trash collector over to, you couldn't, those were the highest jobs then.
But there was a station at near 21st and Main Street. It's next to the
It's a
liquor
museum
store.
now,
No.
yeah.
It's next to the liquor store that's on Main Street. It's a
It's
restaurant.
an apartment building,
It's
right?
an apartment restaurant.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was the chief in there. He was a white guy. He was the chief there. My dad used to come by in the trash truck on that route. That was his route. And this guy, my dad said he used to just sit out there on the stoop all the time. And he talked to my dad and he said, like, you should apply for the fire department. And my dad was like, come on, apply for the fire department? I'm not gonna apply for that. They'll never hire me for that. And he said every time he passed by there, literally, this guy would just look at him and say, you should apply for the fire department. Until one time he did it. That's when he went to Duval for 10 years there, left there, became integrated. He went to 28th and S Street. That was his home station. And it changed from Truck Company 9 to Truck Company 4, Engine Company 11. That's when he
You
was
said
a
truck
teleman.
company.
It was Truck
It's
Company.
called Truck
Truck Company
is
was
where
the
you got
ladder
ladders
truck.
on the
Oh,
truck.
And Engine Company was the water truck.
Right.
Oh,
And he was
okay.
a teleman in Truck Company. That's where he
Well,
stayed.
was there any type of hierarchy to truck and engine, or is it?
No,
It was
no,
just
it's
a
just two
separation
separate
of
things.
it. Yeah, it was a separation.
It depends on what you like doing.
Yeah,
I
same
like engine
thing.
companies.
Same
He like
thing,
truck.
but it
I
was just
engine-
in the.
engine company.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know how the firefighting
Truck
works.
companies,
Truck
there's
companies.
too
Learning.
much work to me. Whenever you have a big fire in a, let's say you had a high rise, not high rise, if you even had a school fire where you gotta bring multiple units in, anything burning above, that's where the ladder truck go. So you gotta go up there and go to the roof, and I did, that was, you know,
Yeah.
but that,
You gotta see that right.
Yeah. No, I ain't going up there.
Well,
Thank God.
I find this interesting that you said, you know, you kind of was given an opportunity, so to speak, you know, by a white chief, but the people that come from his advice from the engine company, or just throughout his career as a firefighter, were they primarily black or white, or you know, who was seeking his advice? Was he respected? Why?
by
both sides.
everybody.
Young
Doesn't
and
matter what
old,
color
both
they were.
sides. He just
Everybody
he fit right
knew
in.
him.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And everyone come out and seek his advice.
Right.
You know.
They knew him. Everybody knew him. Oh, you Miss Robinson's son.
You know-
That's,
you know,
I
the
used to get a
house-
whole lot of passes because I was his son.
You know the house we grew up in. It was sold after they passed away. My father, and my mother, and after that, the house was renovated, as a lot of houses are over in Churchill. And a white lady bought it. She's a nurse, and I'm sitting in the park one day, Simaraza Park, and the phone rings. So I answer it, and I'm hello, and she says, "Hello, you don't know me. I'm such and such." She said, "I bought your parents' house," and I thought it was a prank call.
Yeah.
She said, "I got your name from Olivia
Right.
Mosley, which
Right.
is a neighbor of ours that lived 3 doors down." And she said, "I'm calling you because I just want to speak to you over the phone. I would love to meet you." She's never seen me a day in her life. I'm on the phone with a total stranger, and she says, "People come by the house, they still think your father lives here." Or she said, "People come by the house, and I look out, and they just standing there on the sidewalk, just staring up at the house." And she said she comes out, and they say, "I mean, you no harm, anything like that. It's just that this was my friend's house, you know." And they explained how he was, and she said, I've gotten so many people to come by here and just say, you know, that they used to come by here, they used to sit right there on that porch, talk to him, and he'd give them the advice, spiritual, all of this. And she said, I'd love to meet you one day, you know. And I never met her, but she said, another reason I'm calling is because this is a total stranger. She said, I'd like to get a little bit more insight on him because I want to do something for him. And the next thing I knew, I got another phone call from her and said, if you ever get a chance, come by your old house. She says, a plaque on the house. They did this plaque and dated back to the original person that built the house, who was an engineer back in the early 20s. Then my family bought the house from him. They were the second owners. It was like $19,000 then. And they stayed in it until 2012. And then it sold again for $365,000.
And what she did
But
was
she put
deemed
this
it
plaque.
historic.
Right,
it's
It
a
was-
historical
it was
plaque.
deemed historic.
Yes,
That's
she
on
got
the
that
house.
grant.
Right, because he
Yeah,
lived
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, it
Yeah.
tells that story about the dates when it was built,
Right.
the original engineer, the
He
Yeah,
lived
contact-
that. He was a
Yeah,
first
contact
firefighter.
I've got a picture of that
Yeah.
plaque, and she since sold that house again. She's moved to Florida, so there's a new family that's in it now. But I mean, it's just like that. There's just so many people that knew
Yeah,
of
it's
him.
historic now.
You know.
The house.
So what I'm getting from engine number 5 was
Nine.
nine. Engine number 9. When I first heard about it, I thought it was just because it was a big milestone for the city, but it really sounds like it was just a huge. The people within engine number 9 just had a massive impact on the community,
Oh, yeah.
and that's why the legacy has been so strong.
And a lot of those guys, at one point, they had a gas hazard that happened. 3 or 4 of the firefighters died in the hole because of gas. These guys, the firefighters, were known, each in its own little community, were known as, and by a lot of people. That was Arthur St. John, very popular man, Lindsay, Kersey, Hicks. And these guys were known throughout the city because they contributed, most of them, the same way that my dad did in his community. And so they were looked up to firefighters. I mean, they were almost like soldiers, and they were looked up to, and each one of them had some mark in his community. And they used to have these meetings every year that all of them would get together after they retired, until I think most of them are dead now. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are still alive.
Yeah, I think it's a
I
couple.
think-
Two out of the first 12.
Willis
I think
may be
it's
alive.
2 that's alive.
Yeah, I think Willis is still alive.
Yeah.
So you say they were almost an underlying fabric to not only the communities but the whole city?
Well, no, I'm saying each one of these guys.
But they commuted amongst themselves, so
Right.
in a way,
Right.
they knew what was going on in other parts of the city.
And then police officers, the black police officers that started, they had an association together, police and firemen. Because the police officers, the same thing. They opened up the police department to black officers around the same time they did the fire department. So it was community. These were people that were looked up to by the entire community. All of them.
Could you say that the same thing for their white counterparts? Were they also community bastions in their own communities? Was this something that was just universal, or was this because
I think it became universal.
Where we lived
Yeah.
was all black.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what happened in the white communities because the communities were segregated.
Of course.
So I couldn't tell you what was going on there. But I could tell you that these black firemen and police officers were revered by their neighborhoods. Yes.
but you had contact with white firefighters and white,
Only if
In
they
the
to
fire
the
department,
neighborhood, yeah.
it was more. It was more so like a togetherness, because you'd go there regardless of what you heard on the news, what was going on. When you went there, it was like
Like a friend, like a fraternity.
they were coming.
Right, it was a
Yeah.
fraternity.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it was
Right.
like that, and you felt that togetherness and all of. I don't know how it was when it was at Duval because that's when they say it was segregated. But when it changed after the 10 years that he was there and he went into this station, they everybody got along together. The white firemen would come by our house on their days off and sit with him, just talk, black as well, young, old. And so I kind of met both sides, and felt comfortable with both sides.
Well, I guess what I was getting at was, did their white counterparts just more or less take their jobs for granted, whereas,
No.
the okay, because I would think that
No,
maybe
I
there was
hear where you're
more responsibility they thought you had to live up to, because this was
when
more
you're a
of a rarity.
firefighter,
Yeah.
see, that's the thing. When you're a firefighter, you it's a whole different thing. So you said, do they take their positions for granted?
Well,
No.
or they just treat it more like a job, not as like a community position.
Well, if you're used to having something all the time, it's no longer novel. It's no longer a novelty.
Yes.
So when you get something brand new, then you want to shine, hold up your flags, say, look at me. And that's basically what it was. Even if it came down to the city and trash men. First black trash men got a good job with the city. So you're making more money than the rest of the community. And then that started opening up. The next step was the firefighters and the police officers. So it wasn't a difference in terms of, I feel more proud than you do, but the thing is, because
They're not
you
more
hadn't
proud,
had
but
it,
they feel like they had more responsibility, more to give to their community.
that probably was true, the responsibility side of it. Because they were icons in the community, they had to live a certain way to
Yes.
keep that image up.
Yeah.
Whereas the offspring, we were so insane that they had to sit us down and go, look, the daddy's going over there, y'all gotta be nice.
Yeah.
Because the image.
Yeah.
Did that answer that question?
No.
Yeah.
I think I was just primed, but Sir James, you must have a question.
No, I'm listening.
Does that make sense
Yeah.
though?
Of course, I'm visualizing all of this.
Mhm.
I'm painting right now.
Yeah.
So keep talking.
Yeah. And then they started buying stuff. Because you got a good job, now we get to get a color television.
Yeah.
We were one of the first ones
Yes.
that had a color television in 1957.
It wasn't the color screen because I remember the color.
No, not the thing you put on it.
Yeah, we had
This was-
4, right?
Right.
What was your favorite show?
What was that one at that time?
Nash. You're really
No,
right.
no, it was well before Nash. I mean, Leave It to Beaver probably. Back then,
Amos and Andy?
Cowboy movies. I like
Rochester?
Billy the Kid, stuff like
Oh,
that.
I've
Cowboy
never heard
movies.
of.
No wonder you're wild.
But
You know,
my point is that because here these guys had steady jobs like the post office, jobs that paid more money, then we were able to ride around in a Buick.
oh yeah.
You know, that's almost a Cadillac. We would ride around in a Buick. And you know, the different things we had that because they were firefighters, now the community is starting to become more middle class. You know, we became more middle class because my daddy was making more money than average. He was
But not
making more than-
segregated yet, not integrated.
It wasn't integrated like that at that point, and it didn't get really integrated until the 60s.
Till the 60s and 70s.
60s really was when it started. I remember going to places in Richmond with my dad. They said, "Y'all can't eat it, but you can't come in. We don't serve.
Really?
We don't serve colored people." I said, "Well, I don't eat it."
Yeah.
But that was the
Okay.
the big.
Well-
That was good. I'll give you 10 points on that one. That was
Well,
good.
I don't know, because I just, you guys grew up in Churchill,
Right.
and it sounded very idyllic, honestly. You know, idyllic childhood, and
Right.
just, you
It
know,
was
it was safe.
we lived in a place in Churchill. Churchill had a reputation of being, a place where you get out before it gets dark. You're there during the daytime. Well, where we lived, I mean, it was semi-middle class. Because
Yeah.
The playgrounds, we had, and
Right.
everybody in the community, you had school teachers and,
Yeah.
and all that lived there. And everybody could, they could.
It was homogenous, yet at the
Yes.
same time, if you're not from that community, it was known right
You're a
off the
stranger.
bat. You
Yeah.
better not run
Yeah.
up in there
Yeah.
looking,
Yes.
talking to no girls.
We
and that-
protect our own.
You're right, right,
Yes.
right.
The Jackson Ward was the same way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I mean,
you couldn't come there. I mean, you could come here, but somebody had to know you.
you better be
You
known.
better not mess with our girls.
Right.
West End was the same way. There
West End was
always
horrible like that.
Oh my
Oh
God,
my
man!
God.
And had some of the baddest gals, but you
Thank you.
but you couldn't grow up in there like that, man.
No, and Fulton was the place next to Churchill.
Mhm.
It's Fulton Hill, Churchill,
The bottom.
the bottom.
Yes.
Fulton was even worse.
Yes. You just didn't go there.
Yeah.
You didn't ask questions. You just didn't go.
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
was, I think one of the firemen lived in Fulton. And so they thought Fulton had its fire station because that's where Chief Finnegan hung out all the time. But because you grew up in the neighborhood, I don't care what color you are, you better not come in the neighborhood if you were not known in the neighborhood.
And he's talking about getting a serious beat down.
Yeah, oh yeah, serious.
The whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, and so there were the only white people in the area were the people that owned the stores.
merchants.
The merchants. The merchants. There were guys that owned the pharmacy and the different little stores around and the grocery stores. But those were the only white people in the area. So we didn't experience that. Everybody went to school, it was black.
And that's where because Sir James drove me around Churchill one time. He was telling me all the history, but then he said, the 70s and 80s, the crack epidemic swept through there. I mean,
Yeah.
did you-
The 80s.
I was in the service too.
So
Yes.
what happened? How did
Crack came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it hit California first. It was introduced as a part of the Iran-Contra deal when when trading drugs for guns. That was the whole thing. And then California first got that sweep of the learning how to cook crack cocaine. How to cook powder cocaine to make crack. Then it just spread and every neighborhood picked it up, and that's people started losing their homes.
Yes.
my point is, your father was alive during this time, still part of this
All
community.
through it.
He tried to.
So what was he thinking? He
He
must have
tried
been driving him
to. He
insane.
still tried to shield me through it because he was a little older than I am, so I was there, and he would just. He knew I was old enough now that I could make my own decisions, but he would just try to keep me in line.
Right.
Remember your path. Stay on your path. And remember
Right.
what I've taught you on
Because
your
it
life.
tore up those communities.
Yeah, because
Yes.
you had
Yes.
people from up north that moved in and they filtered into the neighborhood, and then it just everybody was just, it's like the good people were there or the good people were leaving.
Money became the motivating
And it was,
force.
yeah, and it was just zombies walking
Yeah.
around, So by that
A lot of
time,
our friends
A
died.
lot of it was just quick money, though, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
For-
by that
was money
time
for the
that
drug
was
deal.
that was
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I mean. But it
Quick
just
money and a cheap high.
it just seemed
Yeah.
like maybe priorities were changed, and
everything changed.
It was a design
Yeah.
drug, designed to do what it did.
Right, it did
You know?
exactly what
Yes,
it did.
Because you notice the effect on white people it did it, and black people was totally different.
Right.
It was designed for a melanated system
Right.
to break it down.
Mhm.
But I knew white people go to work, man, how crack. No problem. Black people like miss time, lose a job.
Right.
So it was totally different.
And crack was so addictive, and when you didn't have, it started off like at $10,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was $10 run back and forth, keep on running all night long.
Oh,
but
man,
at $10.
Yeah.
And what happened is,
Wow.
it tore up the foundation.
Mhm.
Because if my dad tried to pass on certain values to me, and then I pass on to somebody, and another capture one of my children, and you introduce crack into the neighborhood, values are gone. Because you cannot, the drug was more powerful than any sense of community, any sense of dignity and decency. And so it swept through the neighborhoods. Now women became prostitutes.
Yeah.
The guys were losing their jobs. Kids were going into foster care.
Crack
Fights,
babies.
yeah.
Fights
I know
changed
one
to-
person
to
lost
gun
5
violence
sons,
and so forth.
stuff like that.
And,
So
and
I
then
find it
Dad-
interesting because you're saying there was people that came in the community just 20 years before, and
Right.
you would know who they were and
Right.
jump
Right,
on
right.
them.
Yes.
You completely lost us at that point.
But after
You know,
crack
anyone
came
was
in,
yeah.
when
It did-
crack came in,
yeah.
it just tore up the
The
community.
attention
Yeah.
went somewhere else after
Right.
crack came in.
Right, and see, before that happened, You got to look at what was happening socially before that happened. They started busing. So now you're starting to take people out of the community into another community and just to go to school. Only thing, they didn't see the community, they saw the school only. So by the time they get home and you don't have the friends making the same people in the next block you knew that you played with. So it starts splitting it up to the point that when crack did hit, you didn't have a sense of community any longer. So it became an enterprise of money only. This was one way that guys could see that they could live the dream they saw on television. The other thing that had happened at the same time was rap music had just come out. And a lot of the guys saw themselves being rap artists.
Yeah.
So
Because they're flipping money, chains,
flipping money,
and
so,
bling bling.
so those were the things that caused the lack of that sense of community.
I was just thinking, this must have just eaten your father alive on the inside.
He still tried to get his point across.
Right.
It was like he was fighting an uphill battle.
Right.
You
He
know?
used to talk to people about
But he
drugs.
would, he would reach out to the people that were on drugs, that were
In
dealing
our block.
drugs, you know. And he would even get to the point it would have me kind of scared, you know, for him, because he'd go out and just tell him, look, you need to take that away from there. You do what you want to do, but don't do it
And
on the
that
spot.
became
Take away
dangerous.
from there, or I'm gonna call the police.
And that was
just
dangerous.
like that.
Yeah.
And I
He messed with that money.
I always worried about him, but you know, he never.
So he never threw in the rags. I can't do anything about it. He just
No, he
fought.
always tried.
He always tried.
He always tried.
Yeah.
Until
Few listen, but a lot of them they just went.
give you an example of
You know.
how he was as a human being. One Christmas Eve, one of the guys in our block, he and his mother were hooked on drugs.
Yeah.
They
Next
went
door
in the
neighbors.
next block when white people started moving into the area. He went in the next block, he and his mother, and killed the people in the house to get the money.
Mhm.
My dad, and they got 40 years, and my dad, on his dying bed, I asked him, I said, so tell me, Dad, how you feel about your life? He said, the only thing I really feel bad about is that I could not get Robinson, what's his name?
Yeah.
I couldn't
Jamal.
get Rob, I couldn't get him
Yeah. That
to
was sad.
understand what life was about, and he went and killed somebody.
Mhm.
He was more concerned about he couldn't touch that person's life. On his deathbed, he told me
Mhm.
that. You know? So he was involved to the point, to the extent that he could get involved before the violence became, you better not go down there and talk to them on the corner, they'll shoot you.
But he did it.
But he did it
He
anyway.
did it.
So,
Yeah.
when you said the point of life, if you could sum it up in a word or a sentence or a phrase, or what was the, if he had to, talk to you for 30 seconds, what was his, how would he convey his message? How would
He was
you
God
know?
sent.
He was God sent. He
He
wanted
was a
you to
messenger.
see that you
He
were
was God
loved.
sent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would he bring himself down to your level?
Oh, absolutely.
He stayed on the lower level.
Yeah, he always.
Yeah, he never put
Yeah.
himself up on a pedestal, even like to say, I'd like to have a Mercedes, or I'd like to have
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. As growing up,
Yeah.
He wouldn't even
take
the
it.
lieutenant's test
Yeah.
because he wanted to be in with the guys.
He wanted to stay at his
Yeah,
level.
he wouldn't
Nothing.
take
He was
the
never
lieutenant's test.
fancy, anything like that.
Yes, any fireman. And,
He shopped
never
in
would
places
take the
like
lieutenant's
Goodwill, and all, but he had a job as a firefighter. But
Right.
he just kept himself on the level. He said, if I had that car right there, you know what I'd do with it? I said, I'd keep it. He said, that's something.
So to
You know,
sum up what he was
he
trying to
just
do with people
did
is
not
to show them that they were
believe
loved.
in being
What?
flashy, fancy, and above. He just wanted to be on a level where he could help somebody.
And to answer his question, what was the summation of what he would try to get across is to show somebody that they are loved. God loves you, so you're loved.
Yeah.
You don't have to act that way. God loves you.
Yeah.
Because he always saw it as a
Even when
part.
there's no one else for you.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
And, if
Yeah.
your house burns down, the firefighter's gonna be there to save
Yeah.
you. So, there's someone gonna be there for you.
Right.
Mhm.
And it sounds like he really lived.
He lived a
What
good
he,
life.
he practiced
He
what
wasn't
he preached.
sick. He didn't take medicine. He was 91 91 when he died, 91, 92.
Nah,
Yeah, but when he died, he had never taken medicine.
yeah. And when my
When he got
mother,
injured, he would have to
when
go
my
to the doctor. and
mother
stuff.
passed away.
Not take diabetes medicine, no other type of medicine.
Yeah, when Mom passed away, he really took that hard because he had been married 53 years.
Right.
And I mean, they had the same phone number for 53 years.
Right.
Never been cut off by a bill not being paid, only a technicality.
Right.
You know,
Yes,
and
yes.
222-6484.
Right.
So I still use it, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. But he wanted it to be with my mother because she had the aneurysm, went into the hospital, and then they put her in a nursing home, Manicare, and on Lakeside. He wanted to be there so bad. We'd go by the house. He just would say, "I just want to be with Mom. I want to be with Mom."
Yeah.
So somebody told me, they said, "You need to take him to."
Him diagnosed.
Right. And if something's wrong with him, she said they said that
He can get in there with my mom.
So I took him back from here to the hospital. You know, on a Saturday, I said nothing wrong with him. We always
Right.
He
Never go to the
never
doctor.
takes any medicine or anything, not even aspirin. All my life.
Even if he's in pain.
All my life.
Well,
So I
even
took him
pain,
to
yeah.
I took him to the hospital and they checked him. I sat on there and waited. About 30 minutes later, the doctor came out. He said, "Well, I'm gonna tell you, we did find something with your father that I'm sure we can get him into where he needs to go." He said, we did x-rays, and he said, "Come in, let me show you." And they popped them in. He said, "You see, this is the lung. You see where it's dark over this side?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This one where it's lighter." Yeah, I said, "Yeah." He said, "Your father's," I'll never forget, he said, "Your father's left lung is 70% full of cancer."
Block.
Oh, wow.
So he had
70%.
stage 3 or 4.
Yeah. He said anybody with cancer of that level, that stage,
Right.
he said they would have been in the hospital,
Right.
hooked up to machines.
But they
Even
didn't
if
know
they had survived to that point, you know. But yeah, he didn't know it.
He didn't even know
He
it.
didn't feel it or
Right.
anything
He
like
wouldn't
that.
know it.
Yeah.
And he lived good.
Yeah,
That was
so
the point.
so we went into the room. He said, I'm not gonna tell him. He said, I'm gonna do it another way. So we went into the room. I'm blown away. And he says, he's just sitting there, and he's like jovial, and I'm sitting on the bed. "Hey, I told you I'm fit as a fiddle, right? I don't take no medicines." And stuff." He said, and I'm looking at him like, and he says, "Mr. Robinson," he said, if I had some news to tell you about a sickness or whatever," and he said, "at the age you are now and how you've lived your life and you spoke on it and stuff since you've been here, I've never seen you before, would you want to know if there was something wrong with you or not?" And he said, "You know what?" He said, "I wouldn't." He said, "Because I've lived a long life."
Right.
Wow.
And he said, "I've done everything."
Yeah.
He said, "I've seen."
That was a good question.
I've seen it
Right.
from
Yes.
segregation
Right.
to where it is now.
Yeah, yeah.
I've raised my family.
Yeah.
This is my boy right here. I have
Yes,
2
yes.
others. I have
Right.
daughters. And he said, all of them treat me with respect. And he went through that whole scenario again. I'm sitting there like,
That's
I've
the
heard
sad
this for the
part.
118th billion trillionth time, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, then he said, "No, in essence, I wouldn't want to know." So the doctor patted him on the shoulder. He said, "Thank you, Mr. Robinson." But he got him in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And my mother died, and without her being around, I
Yeah.
went to the nursing home.
Yeah, I
And
did
hopefully
too.
we're winding this up because this is getting to the sad part.
Yeah.
So I went to the nursing home the day he died.
Yeah. I went the day before.
I went the day he died.
Yeah, when I went, he was he said he was laying in the bed. My son and I went, and he was talking and fading out asleep. Wake up, talk. And out of the blue, he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "See what?" He turned around. He said, "That picture." He said, "The picture right there." I said, "Picture where, Dad?" "On the wall. You can't see that. It's Mama. It's a door." And I said, "Oh my God." I said, "Dad, it's nothing on the wall." He got real
Adamant about
Yeah,
it.
he's like, "I see the picture on the wall and there's a door." That was the day before he died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you went there the day that he did pass.
I went there. The last thing he told me, he told me about the boy.
Yeah,
He also told me, "I'm going to see Mama now," and that was it.
yeah,
Wow.
He said, "I miss Mama. I'm going to see her
Yeah.
now."
yeah.
And he was gone.
My next door neighbor, Miss Margaret, she's just like my father was.
Mm-hmm.
She's 88 years old. She's a the mother of the church over in Churchill, Good Shepherd Baptist on 28th Street. Everybody in the community knows her. This lady drives around. I mean, I used to try to keep up with her. I see her back out the driveway, and she backs out so fast, you hear the muffler scrape the ground. Then the gear click, boom, and going up the street. 88 years old, right? And sometimes I'd be on the street, and she passed by. I try to catch up with her, and I look, I'm doing 50. I just forget it. And I said, Miss Margaret, I know they, but anyway, she was just like my father as far as a people-oriented person. Always try to talk to you, help you, give you the last. And she went up there that day, because she sat there with him. She'd go there day by day and just sit there. She said I was sitting there and I held his hand and I was reading some scriptures because both of them went to Bible study together. And she said I was reading scriptures to him and I could tell he heard me because he was asleep, but he would smile and then he'd stop smiling and I'd read something else. And he'd smile, and I could tell because he'd squeeze my hand. And I could tell by the expression on his face.
He was getting it.
And I read and read and read, and I noticed his hand started to let go. And she said, I thought he had fell asleep, so I eased back from it, pulled the cover off, and went out the room, told the nurse, he's asleep now, that I'm gonna go.
I got there right after the shoot.
Yeah, so she said the nurse came in and just checked him real quick to make sure he was okay. And she looked at him, and she said, "No, he's not sick. He's passed away."
Yeah. But anyway, so that's the story, and that's more emotions than I need.
Yeah, no, hey,
hopefully you got
I'm gonna
anything you want.
He was the best.
I have one last question, unless Sir James has one after me. So, when he's being painting this mural, and obviously he's going to have a lot of historical context, we want to bring a lot of this story to the forefront. But when these kids from elementary schools, local schools, even the colleges, when they come and see the finished piece or even help work on it, what do you want them to take away from your father's legacy as well as Engine Number 9?
For me, it would be live a life of integrity. That's what it would be for me. If you're going to do something, if you say you're going to do it, be a man of integrity, a person of integrity.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think just recognize the man as to who he was, how he carried himself through life. Take that as advice, and just try to live your life like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will transfer what you said in integrity. Would you say, Sir James, these projects he's done in these communities, a little help, honestly. I've been part of the fundraising effort, and when he says he's going to do a wall, he doesn't. Is there something to be said about his ongoing efforts and how it parallels with your father's?
We would not be here.
Yeah, I thank you for doing it.
Yeah,
Thank you, man. It's
And
a
if there's
pleasure.
anything I can do to, just carry the cans of paint or whatever I can do to help out with it, then by all means, I'm there because
and I believe that
touched me really.
we've
Thank
attracted
you, man.
that touch, Jeff.
I'm humble.
I'm
humble.
humble and
Once we start
happy to
painting,
meet
I would
you.
like to get the family out there.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Yes,
My
definitely.
son
Come
can't
on there,
wait
bring
to
some
see him
food,
do
man.
it.
Bring some wine. We got the music.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be painting.
I can't believe it, man. It's
Yeah.
right there. It's just like I thought it was something hidden around the side of a building. It's like boom, right in the
Yes.
center stage.
One of the biggest walls in Jackson Ward.
Wow.
And Second Street, you come right down. You can't miss it.
Wow.
I got a client that's calling me,
No worries.
so I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah. Sir James, want to finish it?
This is great, man. I'm just honored. Looking forward to working with the family, and just being here, man. I'm speechless. This history, and this is one of the most important things when we do murals like this. We get in contact with the family because we want to make
Right.
sure we got the
Right.
history right,
Mm-hmm.
photographs and everything. We
But
want
you're
to
in
make
a
sure.
good position because you lived in Jackson Ward.
Yeah.
You feel exactly what we're saying.
Oh,
you
man.
know what we're saying.
That's why I don't have a lot of questions. I'm listening because
Right.
I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable, man.
Thank you for
so
doing
much.
it too.
Yes.
Yes.
that's-
Really appreciate that.
But don't say that. Yeah, wait till I can finish painting, right?
No,
I'm
we'll
sure.
go.
I'm
We'll
sure.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
You
on.
can go, but I actually would say I haven't seen the rendering yet. You guys have any suggestions? What you might want to see up there?
If you what were you thinking? To do like
Well-
most a portrait or to like incorporate something
I'm
around the
still
background?
thinking. One thing I know I'm going to do is develop it in like borders, like royal borders. What do you call it? framing it in.
Framing it.
Mhm.
Yes, framing it in something that's nice and raw, that stands out. You know, some nice colors, some
Mhm.
brightness.
Mhm.
I don't want to do like fire tragedy.
Right,
I want to
right.
bring the goodness out of
Right.
it. You know, put the shield up there. We want to do because there were 8 members, right, or 9? 9, right?
Mhm.
So it'd be difficult to do all 9,
Right.
but just a representation of all
Right.
9. And
And you know, there's a man named Willis that's still alive. He lives on Brook Road.
Yeah.
yeah,
He's probably one of the few that's, I think, that's still
That's still
living.
alive.
Herman Brown just died. Herman
Yeah.
was the youngest.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
still living.
He's still living.
Willis is still living. He lives right on the corner across from where they put the new.
Mm-hmm. Apartments or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
He's yeah, I saw him not too long ago in a restaurant, and
Can you
he can
contact him?
give you,
I can contact him.
Oh,
he can give
man.
you so much
This is
information
great,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, 1 hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.